Namo Fundamental Teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Fundamental Teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Fundamental Teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. The Dharma, infinitely profound and subtle, is rarely encountered even in a million kalpas. Now we are able to hear, study, and follow it. May we fully realize the Tathagata's true meaning. Okay, I think this will be a good point to review what topics we have talked about so far in the Heart Sutra, and to give a preview of the topics that we will talk about starting this time. So, in lecture 1, we gave an introduction to the Heart Sutra. Why we want to study? Why do we even care about the Heart Sutra? Well, because it is talking about the important things, important issues in life, which are what is suffering? How does suffering come about? How can we end suffering in life? Which is also saying, how do we attain true happiness? And in order to do that, we need to understand a special kind of wisdom called prajna wisdom. Okay? And then in the second lecture, we talked about Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, which is a role model of compassion and wisdom. Why this is relevant? Why is compassion relevant? Because it is about caring about all beings, how to end suffering for all beings. And that desire, that wish to do so will be the motivation for us to work hard to understand the prajna wisdom, to end suffering for ourselves and for others. And in the next talk, we talked about gaining the wisdom of life, which is prajna. So we'll give an introduction to prajna wisdom. What is this? And so that covers the line while deeply immersed in prajna paramita. What does it mean to be deeply immersed in anything? To go deep and understand it really well. So the whole Heart Sutra helps us understand this wisdom really well. Now, where do we start? In the next 5, 6, 7, and 8 lectures, we talked about understanding the body and mind. And in Buddhism, we have a special system for understanding the body and mind, and that's called the 5 skandhas, the 5 aggregates. Form, the body, feeling, conception, volition, and consciousness. So we need to understand this in order to get a hold of, get a grasp on properly understanding our body and mind. And then, so we give an introduction to the 5 skandhas. And then the lecture 9 and 10, we deal with the nature of happiness and suffering. And we talk about ending suffering and attaining true happiness. It is something that we need to reflect upon. We need to think about the real nature of suffering and happiness. Okay, with that basis, in the next 6 lectures, 11 to 16, we went into quite a bit of detail on the 5 skandhas and the emptiness of the 5 skandhas. So the emptiness of these things is the core of the prajna wisdom. And of course, emptiness is not nothingness. We're not denying our existence, but it's a special angle to help us get a deep and realistic understanding of the nature of our body and mind. So that's where we are. That's what we covered so far in the first 16 talks. And for the rest of the Heart Sutra, let us just go through it quickly. In the next part, which I call it Know the World, the Heart Sutra help us understand the nature of our world, the world that we live in. Yeah. So we're going to take 3 talks to cover this, the next few lines of the Heart Sutra text. And then the next topic is about karma, rebirth, and interdependence. So we get to talk about what is karma and what is rebirth. So what's the reality of rebirth? Why do we have rebirth? How do we end rebirth and achieve nirvana? And then the next part, we talk about the practice, the spiritual practice, the cultivation. Yeah. And then we'll talk about the fruit of cultivation, which is attaining liberation. What does that mean, attaining liberation? Of course, attaining liberation means that we have achieved our goal, we have ended suffering, and attained real, lasting happiness. And finally, there's the overall review, where we get to the part of the mantra, gate gate, paragate, parasamgate. And that concludes the Heart Sutra. So you see that there's quite a bit of topics covered, yeah, in this very short, terse text of the Heart Sutra. Okay, now let us look at the next few lines. Shariputra, all dharmas are empty in character, neither arising nor ceasing, neither impure nor pure, neither increasing nor decreasing. Therefore, in emptiness, there is no form, there is no feeling, conception, volition, or consciousness. So that is this part of the text where the Heart Sutra teach us about the reality of the world that we live in. How is that so? Well, let me begin with an experience that Shifu had. Many years ago, I had a chance to visit India, and there's the Ajanta caves and the Ellora caves in central India. And those are really incredible, special works of art and religion. What it is, you can see in our outline, the first picture shows this is a valley, and then surrounded by hills, mountains. And then what they did is that the ancient Indian people, they carved into this wall, this cliff along the mountain. And they carved many caves into the cliff. But those are not ordinary caves. They are very grandiose, magnificent, large caves. So they are groups of about 30 caves each. And what happens is, you can see the picture, a dissection of the cave. They carve into the mountain monasteries where monks actually live there. And not just a small monastery. When we think about mountain cave, it's a small cave, a few people, a couple people can sit in there. But no, these are huge. They are mansions. They are entire monasteries in those, carved into those mountains. And so each cave can be 1 story, 2 story, or 3 story high. Now, if you think about how we build a house, how we build a building, we start with flat ground, and then we make bricks or concrete or wood, and we build up, right? We know what we need. We need a pillar here, we need a wall here, we need a room here, and so on. So you put these materials up on the empty ground and you build it up. But imagine the caves. It's the reverse way of building something. Instead of building up a pillar, you carve out the space. You carve out what is not a pillar, what is not a wall, what is not a division. Now, you take out what you don't need instead of putting up what you need. That's how you make a cave, a monastery in a cave. And these are really amazing. If you get a chance, you have to visit it in your life. And not only simple monasteries, but they actually carved Buddha statues into these monasteries. They are living quarters there, and they are Buddha halls in there, and all kind. Monks actually live inside those cave monasteries, and they are amazing works of art. You can see from these pictures. There's a picture down here that even look like amazing, like a Christian church, doesn't it? The way that is raised really high, Buddha in the center, and the design and the pillars. And some of these caves have elaborate paintings. Now imagine these are deep into the cave, so it's not easy to get light into those caves. So how could they do these intricate carvings and paintings? Really quite amazing, huh? Some of these colorful paintings, this first set, Ajanta caves, they started 2 centuries BCE. And they kept building it or carving it for several hundred years. Yeah, and some of these color paintings, wall paintings, reminds me of the Dunhuang caves in China. The Dunhuang or Mogao caves, they are also hundreds of caves with very elaborate paintings. I wonder if they got this idea from India as well. And they are very large, several person tall Buddha statues in these caves. And the next set of caves are called Alora caves, which is not too far from the Ajanta caves, in another hill. And that's built from the 6th century to the 12th century. Also took several hundred years. And you can see the magnificence, how high, how tall they are. So the reason I talk about this is that perhaps the Indians have this way of approaching the world that is different from what we naturally think. How do we understand our world? The natural way seems to be accumulating knowledge, right? And that's really useful. That's how we learn ever since we were little. And in order to look at the entire reality of this world, and then we try to make sense of it, try to find regulations and rules about it, we build up models of the real world, mental models, mental constructs or conception in our mind. And then from simple things, like what is a wheel, what is a table, what is fire, we build up layers and layers of mental constructs in order to understand the world until we get to a point where we can develop philosophy. How does the world come about? We develop religious ideas, sophisticated theories about how the physical world works, like physics, chemistry, how our body works, biology, and also philosophy. What is the nature of this world? What's the meaning of life? So these are layers and layers of mental constructs that accumulated from basic models. But remember, they are mental constructs, mental models. So while they are extremely useful, they get more and more complex. And we can easily confuse mental constructs with reality. So let's say you bought a beautiful car, and that is, you love this car. When you think about this car, what you really think about is a mental construct of that pile of metal. And you form this concept, sometimes even alive to you. And so we build these models of reality, and we confuse that model with reality. When you see a chicken, what do you think about? When you see a dog, what do you think about? When you see a dog, you think about pet, lovely animals. When you think about chicken, you think about Kentucky Fried Chicken. Mental constructs. And some of these mental constructs that we use to understand our world can deviate from reality a great deal, and yet we think that is the truth. Okay? And there's a different approach, which is the deconstructive approach. The first one is the sort of a constructive, you build upon your knowledge. And then there's a deconstructed view, which is removing our misunderstanding of the world. Misunderstanding and misinformation from what we come to know as our life, as myself, and as the world. So that is the Prajna approach. And that's similar to how ancient Indians build the Ajanta cave and Ellora cave. Take out what I don't need, and what remains is what we need. So the truth is not something you build up to, but you just remove whatever misinformation or misunderstanding we already have at this point in our life. So over the millennia, over our civilization development, we have accumulated a lot of knowledge, but some of that knowledge is good, but there's also a lot of knowledge that is misknowledge, misinformation, is wrong. It brings us away from reality. Okay? So this second approach, the deconstructive approach, is quite tricky. It's more subtle. Yeah? Somebody who's used to making a building from empty ground would not know how to carve a building out from a cave into a cave, right? So it's tricky. It's just some sort of mental gymnastics. But then once we get used to it, this can provide very sharp insight into our life. So the advantage of this approach is as we come to understand the world better, we can avoid attachment to the mental constructs because we are taking away mental constructs that we don't need. Okay? So that is the Ajanta caves, how they are built, is kind of like how we approach wisdom via Prajna wisdom. Okay? So now let's look at the text. All dharmas are empty in character, neither arising nor ceasing, neither impure nor pure, neither increasing nor decreasing. So first of all dharmas. What are dharmas? We talked about this before. In a general sense, all dharmas are everything, all phenomena, including physical, including mental, even imaginary. Superheroes, they are imaginary. Yeah. All those things. So physical things, physical entities, mental constructs, whether they are modeled after reality or purely fantasy, they are all called dharmas, all dharmas, so everything. Specific application of Dharma is in Buddhism, the Dharma, which we often capitalize in English, refers to Buddha Dharma. So the teaching of the Buddha, that's a special kind of Dharma that we learn. Yeah, so that's the meaning of all Dharmas. So all Dharmas are empty in character. Now we notice it's not capitalized, right? So we're saying that all phenomena are empty in character. So the word character in Sanskrit is laksana, which could be translated as characteristics, characters, forms, qualities, attributes, or any of these things. So these are the qualities that we think about, that we have when we talk about a certain thing. What are the qualities or characteristics of water? What are the laksana of fire? So what are the qualities of this kind of a tree? What are the qualities of this flower? What are the qualities of iron? What are the qualities of me? What are my qualities? What are my characteristics? And what is your characteristics? And so it's character. Now, the Heart Sutra says, all dharmas are empty in character. Now, this is not saying that we are denying any characteristics of anything. Buddhism is not nihilism, right? We're not denying anything. But we want you to understand better the nature of these qualities, how they come about, and how they change. Okay? So in Sanskrit, lakshana, alaksanatas. So form is not form. Form is empty. When you add a, in front of a term, that usually negates it. Yeah, lakshana, alaksana. So what we're trying to say is we want you to understand the transience of characteristics of a phenomena. How these characteristics are not fixed, are not intrinsic. Yeah. For example, so these characteristics, these attributes, they come from a certain set of conditions that make them appear to have these characteristics now. But conditions will change, and the characteristics will change also. That sounds kind of abstract. Let us look at a few examples. For example, fashion style. What kind of clothing style is fashionable now? So when it is fashionable, and you look at it and say, wow, that is pretty, that is cool, that is beautiful, that's nice. And then a few months later, or maybe a couple years later, when it goes out of fashion, then you look at it, oh, that is ugly. How does the same clothing go from fashionable, beautiful, to ugly? Yeah? So what are the characteristics of that piece of clothing? If you look at the clothing that people wear in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s, and today, yeah, we've gone through many different kinds of fashion styles, and we look back, oh, that is so old. But then who knows? Maybe 30 years ago, it becomes popular again. The characteristics, can you say that, whatever characteristics you attribute to that piece of clothing, that design, is it real? How real is it? Is it permanent? Is it intrinsic to that piece of clothing? No, right? So that characteristics, whatever you think it has, is empty. Whatever qualities, characteristics you attribute to that piece of clothing is empty, which means that they are not intrinsic to that piece of clothing. A different person look at that same clothes can have a different set of characteristics attributed to that clothing. You may think this is cool, she may think it's not cool. You may think this is pretty, she may think that it is ugly. So whose attribution is real? None of it is real. It's relative. So we say characteristics of that piece of clothing is empty. Another example is being chubby desirable in our society or being slender. Yeah. In the last 30 years maybe, you may think, being slender is desirable. But times have changed. There is some sort of movement. Maybe being chubby is cool too. I remember when Shifu was in high school, and I was in the 70s, 1970s, late 70s. I had a history teacher. And he was telling us, all of you think that being slender is cool, is pretty. But you don't know, just 30 years ago in America, women being chubby women are very desirable. Why? Because they can work in the farm, they can breed, they can give many children. So that was the really desirable woman. So we were shocked in our classroom because our whole life we have a different sense of what is what is pretty. And my history teacher was telling me a different time, not so long ago, where people's sense of beauty were quite different. Yeah? So that attribute of what is pretty, what is not, is empty. It's conditioned. It changes with time and place and people's thinking. Yeah? So similarly, is dark skin desirable, pretty, or fair skin? Yeah? Is in our food, is fat evil or is fat actually good? Yeah, for the last 30 years, fat is evil. We need to reduce fat. Low fat, no fat milk. But then, in the last few years, recently, there's also a new kind of thought. Oh, there's good fat. Olive oil is great. You got to take a couple spoonful every day and so on. There's good fat and there's not so good fat. So you actually want to take some good fat. So who knows? Maybe in a few years, people's thinking change again. Yeah. In Chinese, we have a saying: 失败为成功之母. Failure is the mother of success. Or no pain, no gain. So is pain or failure, is that good or bad? Is that something desirable or not desirable? Imagine somebody becoming very successful or make a lot of money without ever experiencing any challenges or failure. Do you think that's actually a good thing, or does that actually put him into a dangerous place? Yeah? So, failure, success, are they really opposites? If one can build the other, then how can they be opposites? Perhaps failure is a necessary ingredient of more solid success. Yeah? So what's the attribute of failure? What's the attribute of success? When we probe these mental constructs deeper, then we have a more realistic understanding of the true nature of these things that happen in our life constantly, right? That we experience, we encounter in life. So, Shifu gave these few examples. Please come up with your own examples of the emptiness of common characters we think about something, some phenomena. So why is this a liberating view of life? Heart Sutra is all about liberation, ending suffering. So our dharmas are empty in character. Think about the examples that Shifu just went through. When we have a very fixated, very stubborn view of what something is or is not, what kind of problem that lead us into, what kind of obstacles. When we are very hard and fixated in our thinking, we will constantly run into obstacles. But when we relax that, when we try to see different sides and how these characteristics are transient and conditional, it's not that we don't have any principles anymore. It's that we can have a deeper understanding of the nature of that phenomena, that dharma, including people. This is a liberating view of life. And if we gradually get used to this way of looking at things, examine things, reflecting on situations and people, then we will find that we are wiser. And it actually brings more a liberating way of living. So I want you to think about that. Now let us reflect on the main points we talked about today. Shifu first gave a quick review of the topics that we covered in the Heart Sutra so far. Do you remember these? And when you look through the Heart Sutra text, do these themes, these teachings come up easily? So that when you read the text of the Heart Sutra, it's no longer cryptic. It becomes to have meaning to you. And Shifu also talked about the future topics that we will cover. And the current one is about understanding our world. And so by understanding the empty characteristics of all phenomena, then we get closer to understanding the things that's happening in our world. Shifu gave several examples. Please come up with at least 3 examples and why the usual qualities we associate with that phenomena, with that object, or with that person, why these qualities or characteristics are not fixed. They're not inherent part of that phenomena. And under what situations do they change? So that's an important practice to help us see more deeply the phenomena that is in our life. Let us conclude by making a dedication. May the merits from studying the Dharma be shared with all living beings who are suffering. May they be able to end their suffering soon. May all sentient beings be able to discover the Buddha Dharma and gain the Prajna wisdom and attain liberation.